What will seem like seconds for you has in fact been a few weeks for me. You'll notice the green touring has gone, that's at the body shop, and I've got to get all of this finished so that I can take this car up when I go to collect the touring or tourer. So I'm going to carry on with my rear wheel arch lip repair now. I'm going to attempt to use a technique I've not actually used before, and that is to put a step in this panel with my joggling tool on the compressor, and then this will slide up behind the original wing, and then I should be able to make a really nice weld all the way along the lip. I'm just going to trim this down a bit more, and I've deliberately left curves in it because the joggling tool's not great at doing 90 degrees. And then I'll come back and trim this panel down. It'll probably be quite time consuming adjusting this up and down until I get it quite right. That's the trimmed down wheel arch lip clamped on, and I've got it lined up with my original reference scratches and outline. The rear doesn't fit brilliantly because that panel will need to be chopped away a bit, or this one slid up and under, so it's sitting a bit proud at the moment. Everything looks good. A bit of a gap here because I trimmed this panel back a bit too much. You can see how damp and shitty this garage is. It's just, even though the car's indoors, it's been quite warm outside and the garage is still stone cold. So there's lots of condensation on my crappy concrete ceiling, and I still don't have any lights in here, so I'm using that little light array thing there rather than the old fixed ones because none of that works. So the plan is draw around this a final time, and that will give me my well, profile really, and then I'll make a cut 5mm this way, or however deep my joggled edge is on that panel, and then joggle this and it should slide up behind. I'll also put my plug weld holes in around the wheel arch lip. One thing before I set the final position is to offer up the rear bumper and just make sure that that line meets the bumper nicely. So I've just marked that, scribed a really good line, so happy with that. Offered the bumper up, it looks the same as on the other side, so that's good. One evolution in my car bodywork, you know, playing around, I've decided to buy some of these Clecos. They're basically panel pins. You put them through with this special tool and it holds the two panels together. So as you drill a hole all the way through your panels, I'll have to get outside for this. So there's the tool. As you squeeze the trigger, the fingers come past that central fixed rod and close in under spring pressure, but as you release they widen and then retract. The idea being you drill a hole through both panels, the diameter of that, when it's in that sort of forward position, you put this tool through the hole, then you release it and it pulls the two panels together. So I'm going to use this to hold my wing on in key positions where it's a bit baggy, like where we had this dent here, or where I had that other dent down here, because I'm happy with the profile of this wheel arch lip, but I'm not so convinced about the profile of this. You can still feel the undulations where I beat that out from the inside. So I'm going to pre-drill some holes for this before I put the joggled edge in, and that way I know that when I offer this up behind it, it's not only clamped up, but it's in exactly the right position, because obviously these scribe lines aren't going to line up once I've put a step in this outer panel. I hope that makes sense. It probably doesn't, and I'll probably have to put some captions in, but there you go. I think I'm going to need a bigger hole. You can get these in different sizes, and it does tell you what size drill bit you need, but I've thrown away my instructions. That was a 3.2 and it's too small, so this is a 3.5. Should try again. There you go. So that's the two panels pulled up tight. In the past I would have just used a self-tapping screw, but this is a lot faster, hopefully. That's really neat. I should be better to show you. So I had a baggy hole here before where that dent was, and that's pulled the two panels together. So I'm going to put another one in there, and probably one along the middle somewhere, and one up the top, and then we should be good. That's cool, I like that. Right, well, I'm going to take them all off again now. Put the step in, drill the holes, or stamp out the holes for the plug welds, and then clean up that arch lip and just make sure that the joggle fits nicely with that edge there. Nice clean hole. I've marked a couple of key ones because there's either not enough depth of flange or it's just an awkward position. So there's a couple up here and down here where I've actually pre-marked exactly where I want this hole. Right, onto the joggling. This bit's fairly uniform down to about here, and then I'm going to have to shape it. So I'll do the first bit, offer it up to the car, and then come back and do it again once I know exactly where I'm going. Make sure I get it the right way round. People might need a bit more air. I have a slightly irritating problem. That is, I always knew that I would have to trim this panel back to meet the joggle. This is really hard to explain with words. Basically, I want this panel to end up being on the top and this panel to have a step in it and go up and behind, which means this panel needs to be chopped back to the depth of the jaw of my joggle tool. Otherwise, I'll be trying to feed this in and it'll be hanging off down here rather than being up in behind there. That's fine up here because I can just trim this outer panel back. But down here, I've basically chopped it too narrow. I've already chopped too much meat off this. So my joggled edge is going to have to take that into account. So down at this end, I'm not going to be able to insert the full depth of my joggling tool over this piece. I'm going to have to bring it out a bit. Otherwise, it's just not going to work. So hopefully that'll become clear once I've done it and offered it up again. So I've just been down the car and I've drawn out roughly where that tapers out. Hopefully you can see that. And with my very limited air supply, I'm just going to try and crimp the rest of that out. It's not the easiest tool to use actually when you're trying to be precise, but we'll give it a go. So you're already getting steps in it. When you can ride along an edge, it's fine because you can keep it perpendicular, but doing this, it's a lot harder. Yeah, right, so that's in there, and the good news is we haven't run out of air. Bad news is it's not exactly the neatest, but hey, it is what it is, as my friend Jason would say. Okay, I've had a big fat fail. There's something wrong with that compressor now. I've changed the plug, pressed the reset button, fiddled around with it, and it won't work. So I have very limited amounts of air left. I've got all the holes in there, and I've just started joggling that edge. I'm going to go back to the car now and work out exactly how that line should taper out down there. Back at the car, just got along with a marker pen, offered that up and drawn on in black roughly where I need to cut to get this to, actually that will need to come back a bit further, where this can slide up underneath. So basically need to trim off about 5 to 15 mil all the way around up to about here. Excuse me. Well, this first attempt go, it's pretty good. It's in there. I'm broadly happy with the shape. I think this is going to be one of those panels that after very slow and careful welding and hammering, it's going to look pretty damn good. So before I completely freeze my nuts off, I'm going to go and get a cup of tea. I still need to do something here. You can see that's not lining up right. I think it's because I've left too much meat on here. I might just whip that tab off and then seam weld it in there. In fact, I'll do that now and see what it looks like. Yeah, it's already looking much better. Might need a bit of hammer action. Yeah, that'll go. Beautiful. I'll probably do that first. I'll probably tack that and then I can chase this wheel arch lip along. Cool, as I said, I'm going to go and get a cup of tea. Okay, getting ready to weld now. I'm really happy with that. It all fits nicely and the profile's good. I've also sorted that rear edge out now. A big clamp in there, just rolled that top part of the wing out. So I'm just gonna start tacking it where it fits. There are a couple of bits like here where I think I'm gonna push that wing in till then weld it. This bit's lovely, that bit's really good. The bottom, I think I'm just gonna roll that out slightly and then tack it there, and then I'll have to, probably once I've got the sill on, I'll go back and weld that in properly. But yeah, this will be quite a slow and careful process to make sure I don't A, warp this panel or just have this bowed out too much or something silly. Oh, this is frustrating. I cannot get the light right. Basically, we can't see through the helmet because the LED lights are so bright. so I'm going to have to think about how best to do this. Right, the battery in the GoPro has died. I don't really know when that died or how much you got to see, but basically I've done the wheel arch lip and there's quite a lot of warpage of that panel above, basically because I didn't take my time enough, I don't think. Part of the problem with having joggled the edge is you need more heat in there to penetrate, but then that means you warp the top panel. So actually, if I was to do it again, I probably would have butt welded it, because I could have been much more controlled in how much heat I was putting in. Anyway, that's on there now, and I'm just going around doing the plug welds around the wheel arch lip to the inner wing. Okay, time to recap. That wheel arch lip is on there. I've done all the plug welds around the inside. We do have warpage, which, you know, realistically you're going to get that. It's just a shame. I was trying to do it nicely, but I basically ballsed it up. But then again, I am just a hobbyist, so you have to be kind of realistic about these things. The body shop, I'm sure they'll get that out. I'm sure they've seen worse. I think part of it was me putting too much heat in, obviously, not taking the time, and this, once it had the joggled edge in it, was really stiff, whereas that was dead floppy. So if you try and put the heat on that, it just burns away. If you put the heat on there, you need so much to get penetration that it just requires a lot of, well, just makes for a lot of heat build up. And yeah, I wasn't careful enough, I guess. But never mind, that's on there. I'm going to put some red oxide on it now, just overnight, to protect it, and hopefully it won't look quite so ugly tomorrow. got the Bonder primer on. I would say it looks a million times better, and it does look better, but you can definitely see the warp. Not that bit, that's just the sort of curvature of the car, but yeah, down here, see that? So I don't know, never mind.